Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 5 of Tour of Romandy, the last stage of racing here. Now, today's stage, 170 kilometers, about just over 105 miles in length, and 2 categorized climbs on today's stage. There's a Category 2 climb at about 6K, just over 7%. Then a Category 3 climb that's around 3 kilometers, 3.5, and it's just under 7%. So it's going to be a hard 2 climbs for the sprinters if they want a shot at winning today's race, and they have to get through the last right turn to the finish at 300 meters to go in order to be able to win today's stage. When the racing comes on, we see 5 riders in the front group, but one of them at 81 kilometers to go is already coming out the back, and that's Abi. Abi, the Swiss national team rider, he's getting dropped right away as the gap's at about 2 minutes to the UAE-led peloton behind. Now the 4 riders up front, there's a thread in general classification up there because Thomas Glaugus up there from Jumbo-Visma, and he's 2:15 on the general classification. He's got 3 breakaway companions left with him up front in the form of Robert Stanton from Alpecin, Paul Laperia from AG2R, and Alexander Camp from Tudor Cycling. Those 4 riders are throwing down as hard as they can, but behind UAE team members is setting a stiff tempo going up this climb. It's not blowing the peloton in pieces, but it is sending the sprinters out the back because we're going to see Mazzato from Arkea Samsic out the back. We're going to see Gaviria, Fernando Gaviria, the top sprinter here at Tour of Romandy, left anyways, because remember when the racing started 6 days ago, there was Mark Cavendish here, but he's dropped out already early on stage 1 here at Romandy. So with Gaviria going out the back, you know other teams are going to start getting excited, but Movistar aren't panicking. They're doing a fantastic job. They got teammates left around Gaviria on this Category 2 climb. They try to get him up and over the KOM and then back up to the front peloton if they can. UAE team members, like I said, setting a stiff tempo at the front as they go over the KOM at about 1 minute 15 seconds now behind the 4 breakaway riders up the road, being led by Thomas Glau, who's on the general classification at just over 2 minutes and 15 seconds. With that in mind, we look at the back of the peloton. It's Nelson Oliveira, Movistar, who's sitting on the back waiting for Gaviria. Now, tactically, Movistar are doing everything fantastic. Couple riders left with Gaviria. Nelson Oliveira that's sitting on the back because he knows if Gaviria could stay close enough, he'll drop back too and go get him. And then Jorgensen, who's sitting second on the general classification, the American rider, he's got a couple teammates always around him too. So they're doing everything tactically smart to protect the podium position for general classification and hope to try to win the stage with Gaviria. Now, coming down the descent, we didn't see it, but once we get into the valley between the 2 climbs, Gaviria will make it back up to this front group along with all the other sprinters. Now, with the pole peloton compact together, with the exception of the 4 breakaway riders, whose time gap keeps dwindling as we get further and further along in today's stage 5 of Tour of Romandy. We're going to hit the Category 3 climb, the last big obstacle here for the sprinters if they want a shot at winning. And when we start going up to the front of the peloton, it's EF Education, and they're drilling it up here at the front. Now, they have some help in the form of the Tour de France winner from 2019, Egan Bernal, the Colombian, whose form just keeps getting better and better as each stage passes here at Romandy. He's at the front throwing down. Now we start seeing pseudo quick steps. Ethan Vernon, who won this earlier stage here at Tour of Romandy at stage 1, we see him coming out the back, and he's got a couple teammates with him. As we get to the top of the KOM, the 4 breakaway riders, their time gap just around a minute, so we know those guys are going to get brought back. But we see Egan Bernal drilling at the front of the peloton, going over the last category climb here at Tour of Romandy. Behind, we start looking at the peloton. It's coming apart in pieces. Everybody's suffering all over the places as we start seeing gaps being made in the peloton. We look at the Lotto Destiny guys back there as they're gapped off from the peloton. There's 5 Lotto riders back there because they got their sprinter, Milan Minton, who they want to get back up to this front group. We do a real quick check in the picture. It's hard to see him, but that's Fernando Gaviria that's in this group too. So Fernando Gaviria and Movistar are off the back again, but this time they got some company with Lotto Destiny. Now up front, we start looking at the pictures there, and we see they're drilling it. EF Education, Ineos' Egan Bernal still driving it on the front, and Bahrain Victorious, they're going to get up there and start pulling hard too. Go back to the very back end before we went up over the KOM. Ethan Vernon, the stage 1 winner, he's still off the back, but further behind the big group of 30 that's chasing with Gaviria and Lotto Destiny. Now up front, we start seeing Trek Segafredo pulling on the front too as they're wrapping up the 4 breakaway riders with about 34 kilometers to go. Back to film up just a hair before that, and we'll see just as that group of 30 with Fernando Gaviria, Milan Minton in there from Lotto Destiny, they're closing the gap up to the peloton up there, being drilled with Trek Segafredo, Bahrain Victorious, and with EF Education on the front. They can't hold off the sprinters there. But Ethan Vernon from Soudal Quickstep, he's not going to see this front group again. Now as everything's brought back together with 30 kilometers to go, we're going to see the next tack from AG2R's Jeffrey Bouchard. Bouchard, he does a fantastic attack, but then all of a sudden we see him look back over his shoulder. Bouchard wants some company, right? He doesn't want to be out here solo for 30 kilometers to go. His name's not Remco Evenepoel, it's Jeffrey Bouchard, so he wants some company. The French rider's backing off the throttle a little bit. Doesn't have to keep it off for too long as he gets some company from not one but 2 riders from Two Door Cycling. It's Sebastian Rockenbach and Arthur Klukers there from Two Door Cycling. Now they're driving hard, all 3 of them. The gap's starting to go up, 20 seconds, 27. Then you see 30 seconds as the gap to the peloton is starting to grow with just 12 kilometers to go in today's stage. Now we look at 10K to go. All of a sudden, Movistar have some company back there on the front. Lotto Destiny jump on with 2 teams chasing. That time gap starts coming further back down. And with 5 kilometers to go, things are getting nervous in the peloton back there. It's going curb to curb because we're coming into the finish of the last 5 kilometers here of Tour of Romandy. 4K to go, same thing, curb to curb is getting nervous, but you see UAE Team Emirates on the front. Now they're drilling it, got it kind of single filed out there so they can keep Adam Yates out of trouble all the way into the 3 kilometers to go banner. Now at 2K, as they wrap up the 3 breakaway riders up there who are trying for a last ditch hope here to win stage 5 at Tour of Romandy, everything's back together, and then we go to the front of the peloton. It's Team Ineos that are driving it. They got the 2 Johns up there, Castor Viejo and Narvaez. Narvaez has been a solid lead out man and domestique for their sprinter Ethan Hayter, who's sitting 3rd wheel. This is a problem though. This is 3 riders with 2 kilometers to go. And if you remember right, on stage 2 was this same scenario, but stage 2, when we saw Ethan Hayter looking back over his shoulder, he had a Roman Bardet on his wheel. He did not have quality sprinters like Fernando Gaviria, Nicholas Arndt. He didn't have Mazzato from Arkea Samsic back there. And he certainly didn't have a Milan Minton from Lotto Destiny. With this in mind, the math problems here are a big time difference when you're talking about a stage 2 victory trying to beat a Bardet on your wheel versus here at the last stage of Romandy, stage 5, with pure sprinters back there. Now the 2 Johns up front, and as they're pulling at 100%, we go a little bit further back. There's some chaos happening back here as Mazzato is bumping off of shoulders, hips of Zana from Jaco Alula. Those 2 riders are fighting for position there of Ethan Hayter's wheel, but Mazzato will finally lose it once we see Philippe Masseju come up to the left side. That'll get Mazzato out of the picture, but just for the time being, because that guy's going to do some ping-ponging all the way to the finish of today's Stage 5 Tour of Romandy. Up front, all of a sudden, Ineos, they're starting to lose one more rider there up front as we see Castor Viejo is dropping off the front, but they're getting a little help because Masseju now has popped on the front with 1.3 kilometers to go. And Narvaez, he is happy at this moment, and you know Ethan Hayter is, because he had to be panicking back there with only having 2 Johns on the front with 2K to go. Now he's got some help there from Bahrain Victorious, and once we get under 1 kilometer to go, we see Masseju look left over shoulder, hardcore left, and then all of a sudden we see why. Nicholas Arndt, his sprinter back there, is yelling at him, "Go, man, go!" So we see Philippe Masseju throw down on the pedals. He's going 100%, gets about 100, 150 meters under the 1K banner, and he looks right, and he sees the EF Education train, 2-rider train coming up the right side. They're trying to win with Magnus Cort Nelson. Now Narvaez sees it coming too, and the Ineos rider accelerates with about 800 meters to go, and this will keep Ethan Hayter out of trouble and not get swarmed back there from the EF Education duo trying to come up to the front. Behind, we see Mazzato. He's going to start bumping again now with Magnus Cort Nelson here as we see the barricades start coming up and everything squeezing over. It's Mazzato and it's Magnus Cort Nelson battling for position as Magnus Cort Nelson pushes to the left to try to get a little bit of an opening. Now, all of a sudden, up front, we see Narvaez. He's got to be starting to blow up front as he's still drilling it on the front. Ethan Hayter's there. We're getting at about 400 meters to go. Ethan Hayter's going to look over his shoulder while he's looking left. This is just when we start seeing that is Gaviria starting his acceleration. Now Gaviria is about 4 or 5 guys still back there from the sprinter wheel of Ethan Hayter. So Hayter didn't see him the first time. He'll look straight. Then all of a sudden Gaviria starts his sprint under 400 meters to go. He starts accelerating hard, but then all of a sudden Ethan Hayter knows the pace must be slowing because he looks again. Dead straight back. He can see the sprinter there of Fernando Gaviria from Movistar coming fast up into the last 300-meter right turn. Now, Ethan Hayter wants off his teammate's wheel, and he goes hard left to try to jump on the wheel there of Fernando Gaviria, but Gaviria is going full gas, and he's got some company on his wheel because Milan Minton, the Lotto Destiny rider, he's wrapped up on his wheel. Fernando Gaviria goes flying into this last right-hand bend, full gas on the pedals, sprinting through the corner, comes out with about 225 meters to go. He's got a gap on everyone behind him. At 100 meters to go, he's looking back over his shoulder, realizes he's still got a gap. 50 meters to go, he looks under the arm again, realizes the gap's there. 25, he sits up to go to celebrate, but while he's celebrating, he's looking backwards, realizing he's got this last stage here of Tour of Romandy won with no problem as he celebrates with the arms wide all the way across the line. Now, what happened behind? Well, it was coming down with 100 meters to go as we saw Milan Minton start to open the gap up there to Gaviria that just couldn't hold it anymore. Nicholas Arndt jumped to the right, and there Ethan Hayter jumped to the left. They went past Milan Minton. There was a bike throw at the line for Nicholas Arndt to take second. Ethan Hayter from Team Ineos crossed the line for third to round out the podium here. Now, how did Fernando Gaviria win by so much of a margin? Let's back the film up just a little bit before that last 300-meter right turn. When we see the attack at 400 meters from Fernando Gaviria, he's jumping hard, but he's got Milan Minton on his wheel. Then when Ethan Hayter tried to come over to the left side to get on the wheel of Fernando Gaviria, who he expected this to happen. He said it in his interview after the race. But when he's coming back over to the left, as everyone's diving into the last right turn, Fernando Gaviria full gas sprinting out of the saddle through this corner because he's taking it from the wide, inside, outside, exiting full speed. Back the picture up though. Look, they're going 3 wide back there as you have Milan Minton there, who's going to, of course, be holding up Ethan Hayter, who, of course, is going to be holding up there Nicholas Arndt, who's jumping on the inside there. So those 3 riders, of course, are going to hesitate, wondering just if one rider's going to go a little wide, if one rider's going to hit the brake, if one rider's going to just knock into him, cause a big crash back there. You know that's what caused the hesitation from Milan Minton there from Lotto Destiny, why he had to back off the throttle just a little bit. This gives the gap there to Fernando Gaviria from Movistar to take the last stage victory here at Tour of Romandy. Now, afterwards, in his press conference, he said he's glad he won the stage, of course, but he's getting ready to go to the Giro d'Italia, and he's glad he can see his form coming up and up as he's heading to the Giro, super motivated. Rounding out the general classification, of course, Adam Yates won the overall classification, sealing up a fantastic ride here on the last stage 5 by UAE Team Emirates. As a whole, just did a great job of riding throughout today's stage 5 perfectly. Adam Yates will win the general classification. We see Jorgensen up there, the American kid from Movistar, second on the podium, and third, Damiano Caruso. Caruso's heading off to the Giro d'Italia after this, starting this weekend. So you know the Italian rider who went second at the Giro d'Italia in 2021 to Egan Bernal's win that year, you know he's going to be 100% motivated for the Giro d'Italia. Other riders to keep in mind on the finish here of the general classification has to be Max Pull from DSM, who had a fantastic ride for such a young kid. And then Kian Utebrooks from Bora Hansgrohe had a solid ride to finish 6th on the general classification. Thibaut Pinot was 5th in GC. He's heading off to the Giro d'Italia too. Eddie Dunbar, who was top 10, 9th, I believe, on the general classification. He's going to be motivated with his fitness. And then Egan Bernal finishing 8th on the GC here, where it shows his form is only coming up and up, as not only is he in the top 10 of the general classification, but he's riding the front of these races at the World Tour races. So you know the Colombian's form is looking fantastic. For the July 1st start of the Tour de France, the Colombian is looking like he's firing and should be able to arrive there on great form. Now, this year's Tour of Romandy was fantastic every stage, from the prologue all the way through here at stage 5. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Giro d'Italia is just around the corner this weekend. It's going to be a fabulous battle to see if Remco Evenepoel or Primož Roglič can win themselves another Grand Tour victory to add to their resume. Either way, it's going to be great racing when we get to the Giro d'Italia. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys real soon.